Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's webinar. For those of you that don't recognise the voice, it's Mike that's doing the session today. We have Steve on the live chat as well for any of your questions you may have throughout the session. We'll also be hanging around for a little while at the end if you want to ask away then. But what we'll be covering today is sales credits and purchase credits within your system and how to manage them sort of throughout the system and throughout sort of you sending goods to your customers and getting goods from your suppliers. You'll always come across a time you'll need to send or receive a credit. So managing the system's relatively easy. This process is set up there for some form of automation with them as well. So we're showing you how that works. Is how you can manage them. So the first thing we're going to be going through is sales credits. The main way that you're actually going to be creating your sales credit is from a customer return. So if you're not aware of customer returns, we will be going through it a little bit in this session, but we won't be going too sort of in depth into it. So for your sales credits from a customer return, if we go into movements and customer returns, so one of your customers has come along, they've returned an item, it's damaged, or they don't want it anymore, and whatever your refund policy is, or returns policy, so you may end up having to give them a credit. So to create a customer return, we come into this section, we go into the available lines, we then search for our customer, and hit search. Or you can put in sort of purchase order number, sales orders, whatever information the customer's provided to you, you can search on sort of within this available lines. So you're going to select a random one. So the customer wants to return this one. We'll highlight the line and create notes, and that creates an outstanding customer return here. And it's from this customer return that we can actually go into the return and create a credit from here directly. So you go through the returns process, you would give this collection note to your driver. They go out, collect the goods, or depending on what you want to do, there's a few options for the stock in here. So we just click into the customer return. Within here we've got a number of options that you'll need to select from. So depending on what you actually want to do with the stock, you'll select from sort of the top options above. We'll just return this to our stock. And then for the credit, you have credit customer at the very bottom. So depending on what option you want to do for your customer return, is whether you'll end up raising a credit from here or not. But for this example, we will be. So you return this into your own stock. You also want to give a credit to the customer as well. So you select the options that you want, selecting credit customer, and once your driver's gone, collected the items, come back, that's when you'll come and create your complete your return. So we just hit the complete button, and at that point it also puts that stock back into our system, and it automatically creates a credit. So you don't have to go into any other section, you don't have to go into any available lines like your sales invoicing. It creates a sales credit for us. So if I just go into the lines, go into the links, see here within the links we have a sales credit already created that's outstanding. So you don't have to worry about finding it in available lines, it'll automatically do it for you. So you can double click into it'll take it directly into that credit, and from there, that's when you can either add to that if you want to add to it. You may charge a restocking fee, so you may take a percentage off the line value. Whatever sort of your process is, you'll be able to manage it from this credit here now. Send it out, you'll be able to just use the report and email the report out to the customer. Obviously, once you're happy with everything, you can hit complete, and that'll post to your financial system. So that's raising a credit from a return. So you create your return, you'd select the option for credit customer, and it'll automatically complete, create a credit for you, a sales credit for you to send to your customer. So you'd send that out, and there's the credit for the customer. So that's from a customer return. So you create the return, you'd select the credit customer option, and it would automatically do it for you. Now, you may come across times where you need to do sort of a manual credit. Potentially you've overcharged the customer by accident, and that's just one example you may want to use that for. But you can create a manual credit, sales credit, so you don't have to always go through a customer return. You can just go new record, sales credit, and within here you again can just search for your customer, create from there. A little bit like when you create a sales order or a manual sales invoice. You search for your customer, you create, and then once you're in there, you can go into the line section. And either, if you click create new record here, you can free type a description, so sort of overcharge, just as an example. Give it a quantity, and then sort of how much you've overcharged by. So in this case, it'd be £5, just as an example. So that would give them the sort of the £5 credit. What you can also do is within this general details, you can actually select a product. So you can search for a product within this in this section and return a product rather than just free typing a line. So depending on what you want to do, whether it's a product that you're doing a credit for, or you want to just do a free type line because it's an overcharge, for example, then you've got both options within here. So if you're doing a product, you'd enter the product code in here, search for it bring back the information, and then you'd be able to just proceed from there. So that's a manual sales credit. So you'd use that in some cases if you're going to free type a line, it's an overcharge, or and then you'd use the actual customer return if you credit them for a product that may have been damaged in transit, or they don't want anymore. So depending on which route that you sort of or the situation you're in is depending what you'll do. And again, once you're happy with that credit, whether it's a product that you're putting on there or just a sort of a general free typed line, you can just complete once done, and that'll post to your financial system. Okay, so the two ways that you can create the sales credits from there, just before we move on to the purchase credits, you can create it from a return by actually selecting the option to credit customer, and you can also create a manual sales credit from the new record section, and free type sort of your information in there depending on what you want. The next bit we're going to be going through is the purchase credits. Now there's a few different ways that you can actually manage the purchase credits within the system depending on again the situation that you've got. To actually have a line available to be a purchase credit, you will have to go through a supplier return. So if an item's coming to you that's damaged, or you've gone through a shortage, then with the new shortage procedure it will automatically create a supplier return for you. So it's just a case of you'll complete that, but with sort of just a general supplier return. If we go into this supplier return section, if we go into available lines, and we're looking to just search the product, so the usual process, you will put a percentage sign into this customer, into the supplier name search box. You would either enter your product code if you sort of knew exactly the product code, or the purchase order, depending on what information you've got. So we want to return just this item here. So we highlight the item, we overwrite the percentage sign with the supplier, search for it, and then with this still highlighted, we can hit the create notes. So that's if you're going to be changing the supplier that's available in there. So we just hit the create notes now. That'll create a supplier return for us, an outstanding one here. If I double click into this supplier return to actually put this line into the sort of the awaiting credit stage, we would just leave this default option of credit required from supplier. Now the way that the credits work with your suppliers is similar to the way that it works for your purchase invoices. So they go into sort of the available lines, and depending whether it's an electronic supplier or a sort of like a manual PO, a manual supplier that you send sort of via email, they don't have an EDI system, depends on how you create the notes, the supplier credits. So if it's an electronic supplier, they'll be automatically downloaded when the supplier processes them, and then they'll be matched. Alternatively, you will go into the available lines and create them if it's a non-EDI supplier. So performing this process actually just puts the line into the ready for it to be processed. So it doesn't actually create an outstanding credit such as the customer return. This one you will have to go into available lines or match them if they don't match automatically. So to put them in there, just select the default option and hit complete. Once the supplier's picked up the goods and you've been through that process of actually returning the items, you hit complete. That confirms, that gives the stock back to the supplier and also puts that line into the credit available lines, so purchase credit available lines. So as I've just mentioned, there are two sort of main ways that you'll be creating your purchase credits. The first and the more common way would be electronic credits, so that the items that have been sent electronically by your suppliers, so the EDI suppliers like Vhc, Spices, if you've got them set up for EDI invoicing, then the credits will be electronic. So if I go into invoicing and then purchase credits, now in this system that we're looking at here, it's a test database. We don't actually have any example electronic ones because that's not enabled. But in your database, if you just come into this section and searched on outstanding credits, you'll probably find that there's quite a lot in here in your system, depending on how many returns and whether you've been processing these. But a lot of them will be potentially electronic. Now, if they match on item code, reference, and a few other things, then they will complete automatically and post to your financial system. But there will be some, like your purchase invoices, that don't match, and it's for similar reasons to your purchase invoices. So item codes are different if it's already matched to another credit line, as an example. And in that case, you would need to go through, investigate why. So is it been matched to a different credit? Has it actually been processed through our system? If it's not been returned properly, just a few reasons like that. But otherwise, if it's an electronic one, you'll be able to go into the purchase credit. If we went into the line section, it shows one with no lines on it. So just these are an example. We would go into the credit. The status column here would show a XXX. That would state that the line hasn't been matched, and then this box here will be highlighted with match item. And from that stage, you would then try and find the item in the pop-up box for the match item and sort of match it to the lines from available lines. And that's how you would manage your electronic invoice credits. It would also tell you at the very top the type as well. So this one here is a manual one, but if you're looking at an electronic credit, it would state that it was electronic up here. So you'd have to match your lines to what's available and then process from there. So in your system, you'll be able to see some of them. You'll be able to see whether they've been matched or not. So that's with your electronic credits. If they match, they will post. If they don't match, there'll be a reason to why, and you just have to go see the reasons and try and match them from within the credit itself. For your non-EDI invoice credits, suppliers, you would have to manually create your credits from available lines. So if we go into available lines and we hit search, in this database there's a few. You'll probably see that there's quite a lot in your database, but in here you wouldn't want to be going through and creating like your value spices when you know that you've got EDI invoicing set up for them. It would be sort of any alternative suppliers that you do have. So in this case, what we would do, if this was a manual supplier, we would highlight the line. You've got, they would send you, whether it be an email copy or by post, and once you've got that, you'll be able to match up, and it'll have your return reference on. You'll be able to match up the totals and then create it from there. So once you've actually received it by post, by email, it's when you come into this section and go, yep, I've got this credit in my hand here. We go to all lines. That'll pull all lines through into the actual outstanding credit. We double click into it. You would populate it with the supplier number that will be given on the physical copy that you've got. So we'll just put it to be 1234. You'll also have a reference that you populate into there, and a date as well. So you populate all that information yourself from what they've given you physically. On the right hand side up here, we'll also populate the net value, so making sure it matches what's given on the credit and what's given on sort of the credit in Prima. We'd save that, and we would also have to populate the VAT breakdown. So if we click into this VAT breakdown, we click into the sort of standard rate, it would populate the information in there, and we hit save, and that'll pull through. If I just hit close form, that'll pull through the VAT onto the right hand side to give you the correct invoice, the correct credit amount. And once you've been through, you've populated the relevant information, again, supplier number, supplier reference, the date from what's been given, you would then hit complete, and it will post to your financial system. Okay, so there's two ways of matching your supplier, of creating your supplier credits. So the electronic way, through the matching for your electronic invoices. Then for your non-EDI suppliers, you would have to go into available lines and follow that process when they actually send you and give you the physical credit. There is also an alternative way. You can create them from new record and purchase credit. So similar to the sales credit, you may need to do this for whatever reason, if it's something that hasn't been processed through your system, or you just need to sort of do a manual credit for, again, someone's overcharged you. If it hasn't come through the available lines, you can just go in and create new purchase credit, search for your supplier, give it a reference, and go through that process that way. So if it's something that may have come from your old system, if you're relatively new, you can process it through here this way. Again, you populate your supplier number, supplier reference, net value, your VAT, go through exactly the same process you would with your available lines, but you would have to go into the lines section, actually put the lines onto there physically rather than being populated from your available lines. So just to go through to go over what we've been through creating sales credits from a return, so how that will automatically create one. Also the option going through new record and sales credit to create a manual sales credit if needs be. We've also been through how you can match and your electronic supplier credits, as well as creating them from available lines for your non-EDI, and the way of creating manual purchase credits from the new record button. And that's everything that we're looking to cover today. If you have any questions about the process that we've been through, we'll be hanging around for a little while on the live chat. If you want some more one-to-one training on this topic or any other topics within Prima that you're not sure of, just contact our customer service team and we can put you in the right direction to get some training sessions booked in. But apart from that, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.